Hi, my name is Kaylee Case, and today I'm going to be talking about forensic ballistics. So, forensic ballistics is a branch of science that deals with natural laws governing projectiles and their expected performance. So, basically, it's trying to figure out how projectiles will act once they have been fired. The basis is formed by wound ballistics, which I will go into more detail on later, and this does not include firearms. So typically when we talk about ballistics, we are talking about bullets because that's the most common type of projectile we see, but it does not include the actual gun itself. Some history on ballistics. So wounds from handguns started to be studied in the mid-16th century because an efficient handgun was created and being used on European battlefields, which is pictured right up top. And then modern ballistics as we know it, research began in the mid-19th century due to high-velocity wounds from rifled muskets. And before in the 1980s, bullet testing did not have any scientific validity. This is because the gelatin that was being used as a simulant had never been tested against living tissue, but later a ordinance was established for gelatin using BB gun pellets. So forensic ballistics is very important. It's utilized almost every day. Guns are extremely popular in the United States in particular, and every day in the United States, 316 people are shot. So that is a lot of ballistic injuries taking place every day. And wounds from projectiles are unpredictable. There's a lot of factors that influence them, and there's no way to predict how they will act. So researchers are just trying to get a good base knowledge so they have an idea of what to do when these injuries take place. And wound ballistics in particular plays a major role in projectile removal, so that's important to surgeons and such. So there are 4 different parts of ballistics. First, you have the internal ballistics that focuses on what takes place inside whatever's firing the projectile. So commonly, this will be what takes place inside the gun. Intermediate ballistics is that split moment when the projectile is being fired from whatever it's being fired from, and then that quickly changes over to external ballistics, which is the projectile while it is in motion. And then finally, we have terminal ballistics, which is most commonly wound ballistics. It's only wound ballistics, though, when it penetrates a person or a living thing. And that is the most important part of ballistics. And this part focuses on what happens when the projectile penetrates the body and is affected by the type, velocity, and mass of the projectile and the area the body is penetrating. So like I said before, these injuries are completely unpredictable because of all those factors I just listed. And then injuries from projectiles have a few classifications. So you have penetrating. This is when the projectile strikes soft tissue and the projectile remains inside the body. And then you have perforating. This is when the projectile enters and exits the body with light loss of tissue. And then finally, we have avulsive, and these injuries include entrance and exit wounds, but unlike perforating injuries, they result in extensive tissue loss. And the injuries are also classified as low velocity or high velocity, depending whatever they were fired from. So researchers in this field do a lot of wound ballistic simulations. Both synthetic simulations, which would be the gelatin, hydrogels, and sin bone, and living tissue, which would be like the anesthesized animals, are used. For soft tissue simulations in particular, that's when they will typically use the glycerin, soap, hydrogels, or gelatin. Skin simulations are not very common, but they will usually use pig skin. For bone simulations, usually artificial bone is popular, which is the sin bone. That is a particular brand of artificial bone that's very popular among researchers. And sin bone is also what they will commonly use for skull simulations. So one of the most famous cases that utilizes forensic ballistics is the JFK assassination. So some background, President John F. Kennedy was riding in a motorcade in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, when he was shot twice by a sniper. Um, and no one knew where the shot was fired from at the time of the incident because the whole incident lasted only about 8 seconds. Um, but using forensic ballistics and the Zapruder film, which was a recording someone took of the shooting, investigators were able to determine that the bullet came from behind the motorcade and that Kennedy was struck in the back of the head, eventually leading them to find the spot in one of the upper levels of the Texas School Book Depository where Lee Harvey Oswald fired the sniper from. And that was my presentation on ballistics. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for your time.